What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode on this channel. In this one I'm gonna make an honest attempt on flipping this car. This one actually belonged to a friend of mine and he is moving abroad, so he asked me if I wanted to purchase the car for 4,000 Swedish crowns, which is about 400 US dollars. So I accepted his offer, but the car comes with a few problems. So this car in an okay working condition might be worth around $1,000 or 10,000 Swedish crowns. This one has a few problems, as I said, three major problems. One of them being that the anti-roll bar links are very worn out. That's an easy and cheap fix. Second one is that the starter makes a quacking noise when you start the car. It almost sounds like a duck screaming or something. That can definitely put off any future potential buyers. Hopefully I can fix that for free by removing the starter, disassembling it, cleaning it and lubricating it. And the third problem, which is most concerning, is that the engine management light is on. So I definitely need to diagnose that, and that is my highest priority right now because nobody wants to buy a car with a bunch of engine malfunctions. So yeah, that's my number one priority. And then of course, if that goes well, I'm going to clean and wash the car. I'm not gonna do this full 20-30 hour paint correction. I'm just gonna give it a deep clean and make it look a lot better. The rust right there is mainly cosmetic. Unfortunately, it's there. I'm not gonna have time and money to fix that if I want to make some money on this flip, because as I said, a car in an okay condition might go for $1,000. So I really need to think extra what I'm spending my time and money on with this flip, because I want to make it as realistic as possible for you guys. So with that being said, let's go ahead and diagnose that engine malfunction. So I've connected my diagnostic tool right here, and we actually do have symptoms related to the engine fault, and that is that the car stalls when you come to a stop and putting the clutch. That happens sometimes and sometimes not. It's really annoying, however, but yeah, we do have symptoms of that. So I pulled 4 codes right here. As we can see, we have one fuel trim code. One is an EGR, flow insufficient, so that's probably a stuck EGR valve, so maybe we can clean that, or perhaps we might need to buy a new one. And then we have an map sensor failure, it seems like. We need to check further on that, do some measurements on the sensor itself. Then we have an O2 sensor fault code right here. So we definitely need to check the wiring and the sensor itself. These are the generic codes. I'm also gonna look up the manufacturer specific codes. So let's check them out right now. So I now went into a mode where I can check the manufacturer-specific codes, and here we can see this fuel trim code again, injection timing deviation. That's probably going to be the hardest one to diagnose, but that might just be a result from the engine stalling. So let's move along. EGR, insufficient flow, that's pretty much the same one. And a map sensor implausible signal, and that tells me, that's a better clue. That tells me that the sensor itself probably is damaged, but we'll double check that, of course. And then the linear O2 sensor, and this gives us more information right here, because if I'm not mistaken, this is the O2 sensor before the catalytic converter, the wideband sensor, and it says reference voltage implausible. And again, if I'm not mistaken, I think that the reference voltage should stay the same on these cars, around half a volt, something like that. I need to check that up. But that's pretty easy to double check, and if the wiring is okay, that gives me a pretty good indication that the sensor itself is broken. I definitely wasn't hoping for 4 codes. I was hoping for 1, maybe 2 codes, but in this case it seems like we might need to change some components, which definitely gonna set the budget back. But yeah, next step is to erase the codes, go out for a long test drive, fill it up with some fuel, see if we can duplicate the problem with the engine stalling, and read some live data while we do that, and let's move on from there. Sure enough, the codes came back one after one. Before I do any work under the bonnet, I really want to detail the engine bay. A thing like that can actually bring up the value a little bit. It kind of gives the impression of that someone has taken care of the car. First thing I like to do is to vacuum up any debris that's hiding in the engine bay. And then I also like to disconnect the battery and also to cover up the alternator and in this case the ECU because it's pretty exposed here in the engine bay. Huge thanks to Pureest Sweden for sponsoring this video, and if you look in the description of this video and in the top pinned comment, there is a great offer at their website if you use my code. First up, I'm using their heavy-duty degreaser on a dry surface because it works best on a dry surface. Then I'm gonna follow that up with applying an alkaline degreaser, which also works as a traffic film remover right on top of that. Then I'm gonna agitate and then just simply rinse off. I'm using their rubber and plastic dressing, which does a great job on reviving old plastic and making it look brand new again. Before I show you the freshly cleaned engine bay, let's just go ahead and remove this sketchy install of some extra wiring. I think it goes to if you want to install a light beam on the roof. But anyways, let's just remove it because it looks terrible. And what a transformation that made. I think it will be a pleasant surprise when a future potential buyer opens up the hood and sees this instead of a greasy, dirty engine bay. But there's no point in having a clean engine if it doesn't work properly. So let's go ahead and remove this beauty cover and some other stuff in order to gain access to the sensors and component that we need to fix and troubleshoot. Also real quick, I wanted to inspect the belts, and to my relief they looked to be in pretty good condition, so I made the decision not to replace it because it definitely would set back the budget a fair amount. The very first thing I like to do when diagnosing something is to give everything a good visual inspection. And I didn't find anything super obvious that explains any of the issues that I'm having, but I did, however, find this. Look what I found tucked in here somewhere. Looks like someone tried to replace the O2 sensor before me. Uh-oh. I was very fortunate to find the original workshop manual and all of the wiring diagrams to this car. That means I can check the wire integrity, I can check grounds, power supplies, reference voltages and all of that, which means I won't have to replace any part in vain as long as I do the troubleshooting logically. Everything around these components seemed okay, so let's start to remove them one by one, starting with the EGR valve. Now this EGR valve definitely has some soot buildup, but not enough to throw one of these codes, at least I don't think, so I think the problem lies in the EGR tubing or at the throttle body where the EGR tubing connects. Next up, let's remove the manifold air pressure sensor. And here we can see a lot of carbon buildup that has fouled the sensor. A lot of this could probably have been prevented just by changing the engine oil more frequently. Next up on the removal list is the O2 sensor. In order to remove that, you need to remove the heat shield from the exhaust manifold. I'm gonna attempt to fix the starter noise issue, but in order to gain access to it, you first need to remove the battery tray, some wiring, the shifter linkage that's in the way, and a couple of more other stuff. Before I open up the starter, let's go ahead and wipe it down with some WD-40 because I don't want a lot of dirt to fall in there once I open it up. You can actually come a long way by just disassembling an old starter, cleaning everything up, and then re-lubricating all of the moving parts. In some cases, the starter can feel brand new again. And if the brushes are worn out, that's the perfect opportunity to change them out. Unfortunately, 2 out of the 3 screws that holds the solenoid in place were completely stripped out, so I needed to drill them out and replace them with a set of new screws. That definitely set me back time-wise. Now the EGR valve was working properly in the bench test, but I'm still going to give it a good clean. But more importantly, I'm going to clean the EGR tubing as well as the throttle body where the EGR tubing connects. Now, a dirty throttle body like this can cause all kinds of problems, so good thing I decided to give it a clean. And here we can see the cause for the EGR code. This passageway is completely clogged. And of course, before refitting, I will go ahead and clean the mounting surface for the throttle body. That's definitely an improvement compared to before. While I wait for the new parts to arrive, let's go ahead and give this engine a quick oil service because it absolutely screams for one. This oil filter was so stuck onto the engine, so I'm really glad that you actually can put a socket on it, and I'm also glad that it didn't break, because I actually ended up needing to use a long breaker bar just to get it loose. A couple of days later and I finally got the new parts. So here we got some new gaskets, a couple of new sensors, and of course the freshly cleaned parts that I removed. So let's go ahead and install them on the car. One of the splined tubes on this shifter linkage is actually a bit wider than the rest, so you shouldn't be able to install this incorrectly. Unfortunately, one of the tabs on the plastic bracket for the ECU broke when I removed it, but that was easily fixed with a couple of cable ties. This O2 sensor actually already had anti-seize applied to the threads, which is really nice, but it better come with something extra because it was pretty expensive. And let's not forget to replace those worn out sway bar links. And that's the sway bar links replaced on both sides. With that being done, it's finally time for a test drive. Before I go ahead and do that, let's go ahead and erase those fault codes to see if they come back. As we're gonna hear, that starter noise is gone, which is really nice. So far so good. The clicking noises from the suspension is completely gone. The anti-roll bar links definitely solved that. The engine management light hasn't come on, but I will see. I will continue driving, make a couple of cycles so that every system has readiness. But as we remembered before, the engine management light came on immediately, pretty much when you started the car after you've erased the codes. So so far definitely looking promising. So I've been taking it out for a couple of test drives at different occasions and driving a fair amount, and no more lights on the dashboard, no more fault codes, so I am pretty confident that all of the problems have been solved. So that's really nice. I'm very happy about that. So now there's only one more thing to do, and that is to give it a good exterior and interior detail, or at least a clean. I know you guys want to see a 30-hour proper detail on this thing, but if you want to flip a car of this value, that's just not really going to be profitable. So I'm just going to clean it exteriorly and interior. That's definitely needed, and I think it will be pretty satisfying to watch anyways. So let's get right on to it. For the exterior wash, I'm mainly going to use 2 out of Pureest products, and that's their alkaline degreaser and their ceramic car shampoo. So first of all, I'm covering the entire car with their alkaline degreaser, which is a really good pre-wash treatment. This product should be diluted with water, and it should definitely not be used in its concentrated form. In this particular video, I'm using it 1 to 10 with water. If you're deep cleaning the door jambs and hinges, as you saw me do earlier, it's really important to re-lubricate those. Now, a ceramic shampoo like this won't create any suds or foam. That's just the way it is with these types of shampoos. However, it will leave behind a very hydrophobic and protected surface, which is why they have become so popular as they have. Now, with that being said, I still prefer a classic car shampoo that creates a lot of suds and foam, but that's just my personal preference. In this case, I wanted to save as much time as possible, so that's why I went with a ceramic car shampoo. For the first time in my life, I was actually ahead of schedule, so I dedicated 2 hours to polishing the roof and the hood, and it actually made a pretty big improvement, so I definitely think it was well worth the extra time. Now, unfortunately, there were a lot of rock chips and some clear coat damage on the hood, but it still made it look a bit better after it was polished out. With the outside done, let's move on to the interior and just take a look at how nasty these seats are. I needed to refill the APC and take a look at Pureest's latest creation, a bag-in-box refill system for their chemicals. Talk about thinking outside of the box. Here we can see the seats after they've dried, and I think they came out absolutely beautifully. Final step before I present you the car is to clean the glass. And here we have it. Definitely has its blemishes, but I think it looks 100 times better than it did before. So now it's just a matter of taking some nice pictures, writing a good ad and posting it online. It's pretty astounding how much a well-written ad and a couple of decent pictures can increase the value of a car that you're trying to sell. So, full transparency, you guys probably want to know how much I made on this flip. So, the price of the car was 4,000 crowns, and here below you can see the cost of all of the parts, and in total that was 6,064 crowns, which is about 554 euros or $537. And the selling price of this car was 13,000 Swedish crowns. And speaking of selling the car, the interest for this car was really good. So maybe I could have gotten a little bit more, but I'm definitely happy with 13,000. So the profit of that turns out to be 6,936. But the real interesting question is, how much did I make if you factor in the time that I spent on the car? So here you can see how much time I spent on each job, and that turned out to be 27 full hours. And if you divide the total profit with the number of hours I spent on the car, that turns out to be around 224.6 Swedish crowns, which is around $20 US or euros. Not great, not terrible. Depending on where you live in the world, that might be better or worse, but yeah, if you want to make good money on flipping a car, I would suggest doing it with a car that might be worth a little bit more. But this was definitely a fun experience, and also, of course, this is YouTube content for you guys that I want to share with you. So all in all, I'm very happy with the outcome, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching this, because I sure enjoyed making a video out of this little project. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to subscribe if you haven't, leave a comment and like the video. That way I'll know that you're interested in seeing this kind of content, and if you enjoyed this sort of video, so that I maybe can post more of them in the future. So yeah, until next time guys, have a really good one and take care.